Well, it is October, and we are going to be talking about a lot of different creepy things, including the Zodiac Killer, in which earlier this morning the news broke out that finally, after decades, the Zodiac Killer has finally been identified as Gary Post. Now, this is completely shocking because a lot of people over the past couple of decades were thinking that it would never happen, that we would never know who the Zodiac Killer was. Well, finally it happened, and tonight we're going to go ahead and talk about that, and we're going to go ahead and talk about the creepy mystery revolving the Zodiac Killer, what was going through his mind, and a lot more. Stay tuned. Well, I can't believe that we're going to be talking about this because this is something that I actually looked into for the past decade as a kid just growing up because I was so intrigued by this story. It was completely scary and creepy, but the fact that the Zodiac Killer actually existed in this world, it was very, very unsettling to learn about it. But after decades and decades of deciphering codes and riddles, and after a long time search to see who was the man behind the Zodiac Killer, according to reports, the man was finally identified. Social media exploded this morning with the announcement that the Zodiac Killer was identified as Gary Post, a man who is presumed to have died just about 3 years ago in 2018. I'm going to pull up a couple of reports that we saw on social media just a couple of hours ago. These are some very interesting posts that we got the chance to see. In fact, a lot of people, as mentioned, were talking about this because of the fact that a lot of people were so, shocked to learn the news that finally the Zodiac Killer has been identified. In this first one, we saw it was a report floating around on Twitter that said, quote, a team of specialists to investigate cold cases says it has identified the Zodiac Killer, one of America's most prolific serial murderers who terrorized communities in San Francisco in the late 1960s with a series of brutal slayings and unsolvable riddles. The Casebreakers, a team of more than 40 former law enforcement investigators and journalists and even military intelligence officers, has tackled other mysteries such as the D.B. Cooper hijacking heist, the disappearance of former labor unit boss Jimmy Hoffa, and other unsolved cases. The group believes the killer is responsible for a slaying hundreds of miles away that was never linked to him. The Zodiac Killer has been connected to 5 murders that occurred in 1968 and 1969 in the San Francisco area. Unlike most serial killers, the Zodiac taunted authorities with complex ciphers and letters sent to newspapers and law enforcement. The slayings have spawned books, movies, and documentaries in the years since, and amateur and professional sleuths have pored over the case in an effort to unmask the killer. Well, that's pretty interesting. It looks like the report was mentioning the fact that the Zodiac Killer was an American phenomenon in every wrong way. The fact that there were so many documentaries and so many movies based on Zodiac Killer, of course, it grew out in popularity. But again, after decades, we finally got a chance to finally know who this man is. The report would later actually say, quote, he lived a double life, she said. As I'm adult thinking back, it kind of makes sense now. At the time when I was a teenager, I didn't put 2 and 2 together until I got older. It hit me full-blown that Gary's the Zodiac. Hans Smits told Fox News he spent 10 years hiding a whistleblower who said he escaped a criminal pose, headed by Post. The man who the case breakers only referred to as Will told Smits the pose roamed California's high Sierra region and that he was groomed into killing machine. Talk about being creepy. There's another article that states, quote, so you've got to know Gary's full name in order to decipher these anagrams, she said. I just don't think there's any other way anybody would have figured it out. The case breakers also believe that Post is responsible for the murder of 18-year-old Cherry Jo Bates, who was found dead in an alleyway in Riverside, California, 2 years before the Zodiac killings. However, Fox News noted that the Riverside Police Department Homicide Cold Case Unit determined that her murder is not connected to the killer. So many different articles have been rising up as of late over the past couple of hours here, and of course a lot of speculation really rising. Really, who did the Zodiac Killer kill? What were the links with him? What kind of disturbing messages were also sent? It's incredibly creepy to know that a man of this mental capacity existed. I mean, can you imagine standing near the Zodiac Killer? I mean, I'd be running out of Dodge quick. What would you do? Anyhow, when it comes to the history of the Zodiac Killer, the spree happened between December of 1968 and October of 1969, mainly in California. 4 men and 3 women between the ages of 16 and 29 were targeted. However, despite the reports claiming that there were 7 total killed, in the killer's letters to the Bay Area press, he would claim to have killed 37 people. 37. One man alone, one sick man who decided to go out in a killing spree, unfortunately murder these people. On December 20th of 1968, he committed the first two murders, shooting and killing David Arthur Faraday, 17, and Betty Lou Jensen, who was 16 at the time, just inside the border. In his second attack on July 4th of 1969, he attempted to kill two people, Michael Magoo and Darlene Farron. But Magoo survived despite gunshots to the head and neck. Just 40 minutes after the shooting, the police received an anonymous phone call from a man claiming to be their killer and admitting to the murders of the previous two victims. On August 1st of 1969, the self-proclaimed Zodiac Killer sent local newspapers a 3-part coded message explaining his motive for the killings. 6 days later, he sent a separate letter to the editor suggesting that his identity was buried within one of these ciphered messages. Well, speaking of which, right now, I want to take you to the cryptic, never-deciphered code the Zodiac Killer sent. And there it is. And just take a moment to check this out. I mean, what does it mean? All you see are a bunch of symbols that only one man knew, and that was the Zodiac Killer. But other than that, nobody ever understood what these messages meant. Nobody understood what it really tried to say. Just by the looks of these symbols, it just gives me goosebumps. But take a look at this picture. All you see are a bunch of, as mentioned, symbols, and the question is still rising today. What does it mean? Anyhow, years and years and decades later, it's 2021, and after the long-time mystery, it has been finally solved. The Zodiac Killer has been identified as Gary Francis Post, and hopefully there's a sense of closure after everything that monster did. At least we got what he never thought we'd ever get, his identity being revealed. It was one of the biggest mysteries in American history, and today we can say the mystery has been solved. Or has it? Some people are speculating that it might not be Gary Post, that it could have been perhaps somebody else. What do you think? Do you think they finally identified the Zodiac Killer, or is it just a step in the right direction in finding the real Zodiac Killer down the road? Only time will tell. But ladies and gentlemen, that concludes for this video. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.
Surprising when police found a body in this nearby alley in April 1962.
And this house right here, what was significant about that?
Well, the victim, Ray Davis, was found lying here in the alley. He had been abandoned, and this would have been the home of the former mayor of Oceanside, Mr. McDonald.
29-year-old Ray Davis was a cab driver, shot to death by his last passenger and dumped at the doorstep of Oceanside's most influential.
This is the first article that ran in the Oceanside Blade Tribune, and as you can see, the headline is Oceanside Cabbie Slain.
Oceanside Historical Society President Christy Hawthorne uncovered the forgotten case 2 years ago while researching St. Malo.
Ray Davis radioed and said, I have a fare, I'm taking them to South Oceanside, and then he was never heard from again.
But what really hooked her were cryptic threats the killer made to police.
So on the evening of April 9th, 1962, the Oceanside Police Department received an anonymous telephone call. The unidentified caller stated, I'm going to pull something here in Oceanside and you will never be able to figure it out. And then April 10th, Ray Davis was murdered.
Days later, the gunman called police back, claimed responsibility, and threatened to attack a bus driver next.
After that threat against bus drivers, the city took an unprecedented step. It put armed guards on all city buses and armed military police on buses heading to Camp Pendleton.
When you compare the really unusual similarities between the killer of Ray Davis and the Zodiac, you get these really bizarre, rarely seen characteristics.
Tom Voigt is an expert on the Zodiac killings in Northern California, which started 6.5 years later.
He had training somewhere to be a serial killer, and I really do believe it was in Southern California, and he worked his way north.
He says both cases involved attacks on cab drivers in wealthy neighborhoods, threats against buses, and brazen taunts to police. Ray Davis was shot with a .22 caliber gun with long rifle ammunition, the same caliber and ammunition used in the Zodiac's first Bay Area attack. Voigt says it amounts to a criminal signature.
Two different killers with the same signature in the same state within the same time period. I think it's the same guy doing all the killings.
And then there's the famous sketch of the Zodiac with a crew cut.
Some folks believe that he might have been in the military. Would he have been maybe stationed here in Camp Pendleton and committed the crime here, then went up to Riverside and then later on up north? I'm not saying that it's the Zodiac. I'm just saying there's enough compelling similarities to consider.
The cold case unit at Oceanside Police thinks it's worth considering too. After Hawthorne brought the case to their attention, last month a detective submitted fingerprints and ballistics evidence for reanalysis. They hadn't been checked since the 1960s. Voigt says solving this 29-year-old cab driver's killing could be the key to deciphering the Zodiac, who might still be alive. Derek Stahl, 10 News.